valid argument about how we speak to brothers who are facing that type of, systemic policing and racism. But at the same time, I think she really has to focus on the fact that, the voters that I need are those folks in that audience, and they are those, clones of Cheney that might just be a little bit to her left, that hopefully will take a chance and join the vice president's community of voters to hopefully get her over the line. It's kind of like step one, we need to secure Wisconsin and that base. And then step two, I think we can focus on some of those broader issues within the urban community. But we can't do any of that if she doesn't win.
No, absolutely. Roland is constantly reminding us of that vote total in the Mandela Barnes race. And had there been just a few more black folk in Milwaukee that had come out, he'd be sitting in the United States Senate. And of course, that was before they tightened up all these voter suppression tricks that they're trying to put in place before the 5th of November. I mean, this is, anybody saying they know that what's going to happen in the outcome of this race is lying. Because I tell you right now, y'all been saying this over and over again tonight, threading this needle, threading this needle, threading this needle, and there's no doubt. Well, we've only been here for about an hour, and we have covered the full range, including the breaking news from Memphis on the Tyree Nichols verdict. We're going to take a break here, and in a moment we'll come back and we're going to discuss some more of the stories that we teased at the beginning of the hour. You're here on the Black Star Network with Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment.
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished?
There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message. I approve this message.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message. I get it. The cost of rent, groceries, and utilities is too high. So here's what we're going to do about it. We will lower housing costs by building more homes and crack down on landlords who are charging too much. We will lower your food and grocery bills by going after price gougers who are keeping the cost of everyday goods too high. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message because you work hard for your paycheck. You should get to keep more of it. As president, I'll make that my top priority.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again. January 6th was a wake-up call for me.
Donald Trump divides people. We've already seen what he has to bring.
He didn't do anything to help us. Kamala Harris, she cares about the American people. I think she's got the wherewithal to make a difference. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
This is Essence Atkins.
What's the love king of R&B, Raheem Devon?
It's me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you watch.
You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Make sure you support the Black Star Network. You've heard Roland say it every broadcast, and that is extremely important. And tonight is just another example of why. According to a USA Today Suffolk University WSVN TV poll, more than half of Floridians support overturning a state abortion ban. Abortion is on November's ballot and requires 60% of voters to approve a constitutional amendment. Amendment 4 would allow first and second trimester abortions or even later to protect the health of patients. Natasha Sutherland, senior advisor for Yes on 4, joins us now from the state capitol, Tallahassee. Welcome, Natasha, to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, with great pleasure. And please walk us through what the situation is here with this ballot initiative, what a yes vote means, what a no vote means, and what you're hoping and even maybe expecting to happen at the ballot box in a little over a month.
Absolutely. So I think you really expressed it perfectly when you said that a majority of Floridians do support reproductive rights. I mean, just like the rest of America does, right? I think it's because a lot of us understand that it's healthcare at its core. And we also believe that it's not really the role of government, it's not the role of politicians to make any healthcare decisions really for us. And that includes when it comes to abortion care. And so when we go back to, the fall of Roe about 2 years ago, when the Supreme Court basically put abortion regulation back to the states, we started this initiative to be able to stop the now very extreme ban that we are under as of May 1st. So in Florida, according to Florida law, abortions are banned after 6 weeks, which is before most women even know they're pregnant. It also doesn't have any real exceptions for things like rape, incest, or the health of the woman. And so what we're facing right now is a very dangerous ban that if we're not able to pass Amendment 4 with 60% of the vote, like you mentioned, we're probably going to be stuck with this ban for decades, right? We're talking about young women who are voting maybe now for the very first time at the age of 18 that may not see abortion rights until they're in menopause. That's what's at stake here in Florida.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Natasha. That's quite striking that you would make that crystal clear at this juncture. I want to bring the panel in immediately. Jade Mathis, Counsel, District Legal Group here in Washington. Jade, any questions for Natasha Sullivan? And
yes, Natasha. So one question that I do have, because I have my own thoughts and feelings on it, but you're the expert in this area, so I like to defer to you. What does this mean for Black maternal health? Because I feel like our health is even more at danger and at risk in this case and scenario.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And as a Black woman, I definitely want to say that this is a personal campaign for me. It is something that we have to think about from the lens of reproductive justice, right? Something that our ancestors didn't even have when they were enslaved, where Black people could not decide whether or not to have children, with whom to have children, whether they're able to have the freedom to raise their children in healthy and safe communities. And like you mentioned, Black women across the country are 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related complications compared to their white counterparts. And it's actually worse in Florida. Here in Florida, we are 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. And so having an abortion ban is dangerous to women, in particular to Black women. And we've seen that recently, unfortunately, with the 2 women in Georgia, right? Amber Thurman and Candy Miller, who both tragically, mothers passed away, so leaving their children behind, because of Georgia's very similar extreme abortion ban, right? Doctors were hesitant, afraid to provide life-saving abortion care because that's what it can be. And 2 women died. And now that recent ban, the Georgia Supreme Court actually just struck it down this week. And I know that I saw that Amber's family is suing the state for that. So, the stakes couldn't be higher for Black people, for Black women, families. And so we're really doing everything we can to fight back down here.
Thank you for that, because I think people forget that, I feel like it's a war on marginalized inner city and rural communities, right? Because as we know, you're forcing women of our community to carry this full term. However, there's a high percentage of a chance, sometimes they may have a genetic deficiency that's more prevalent in our community, right? Like sickle cell anemia or cerebral palsy, where 1 out of every 12 births will have one. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. And that kind of changes the context, in my opinion, of what that attack is going to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just released a video of a couple that were willing to bravely share their story, Deborah and Lee Dorbert, and they talked about how They were forced, Deborah was forced to carry a baby that she knew was going to die. And she gave birth to that baby, and he died in her arms 94 minutes after he was born because of this ban, right? Incredibly devastating consequences of these bans, which is exactly why we have to do something about it. We can't wait.
Thank you, Jade. Kwame Jackson, political strategist of Los Angeles. Questions for Sister Natasha.
Natasha, first of all, I want to thank you for the important work that you do. We are at a fulcrum right now in terms of where this country is going to go in this important reproductive rights battle. So thank you for your work. My question is really around how we start to reframe the narrative, right? We start to reframe the narrative around reproductive rights and start to change the personalized stories that people see. People get engaged around names that they recognize, stories that they recognize, people who are close to their family, the same way that America evolved over gay rights and equality in marriage. It's the same thing for reproductive rights. As we start to use personalized stories, as we start to use personalized names, what is the power in reframing that narrative so that we can start to sway people? I know one of the things that I didn't know, just from a statistical standpoint, is that the majority of women who have had abortions are already mothers. A lot of people think it's just a teenage pregnancy issue. It's just, a smaller community issue, but it's a lot of times, mothers who also are already having kids, but then have made the choice for their own reproductive health that they're not going to have a kid going forward. So those types of statistics, those types of personalized stories, how do we start to use those to reframe the narrative and win the hearts and minds?
I think we're seeing a lot of that already. Recently at the DNC, we had Anya Cook, who is from Florida, Black woman, Broward County. And she was so brave in sharing her story. And I think it's really talking about those stories. But I definitely want to talk about it. She had a very much wanted, intended pregnancy, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately was dealing with a miscarriage. And doctors weren't sure how bad off she had to be, how close to death she needed to be before they were allowed to intervene to save her life and provide an abortion. And so they turned her away. She subsequently continued that miscarriage in a public bathroom, losing half of the blood in her entire body, nearly dying before anybody was able to intervene. And so I think that it is sharing these stories. But I think that the other part of the narrative that I think is really important is that the government does have a role in our lives, right? The government, sure, they should be fixing our roads. They should be keeping our communities safe. They should be helping us respond to natural disasters like the hurricane that we just had rip through this country. But when it comes to our healthcare decisions, when it comes to something as private, as complicated as pregnancy, politicians are not qualified to decide for us. We should be allowed as patients, as women, to talk with our doctors, who they're the only ones that take an oath in our best interests, to talk with our families, to really think about our own faith, because everybody's faith is different, and really make these decisions for ourselves, because the government has no place in that. Because if we start to allow that, then what else are we talking about here, right? What else is next? We're looking at things like the risk of no longer having access to things like IVF or birth control, right, to prevent pregnancies that are not intended. But it'll be really interesting to see that if these kinds of things continue, we're going to have now what? Men in the doctor's office where the doctor says, I see that you're close to death, but hold on, let me consult an attorney to find out whether or not I'm allowed to help you make a decision about life-saving care. It's absurd, right? But that's what we're doing to women right now in a lot of these states, like the South, where there are a lot of Black women that are impacted by this. So I think really people just need to talk about it. They have to understand what's at stake.
Yeah, it reminds me of Vice President Harris when she was on the Senate committee to approve Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And she asked him that question, that searing question, can you tell me about a law that regulates the reproductive rights or sexuality of men? and he dodged and he weaved and he moved around, but he could not name a law that showed that we're going to try to put the same regulations over men's sexuality and men's reproductive rights as we do over women. So I think threading that needle and making sure that we're always hitting those points is extremely important. I know there was a great ad campaign that came out with, the older white man sitting in the middle of people's bedrooms, sexual conversations, sitting in the middle of your doctor's office and kind of like the odd man out. People really understanding that's what you're doing. You're placing this older white gentleman in the middle of your sexual relationship, your reproductive choices, oddly there in a way that we all know that is not their role. It is not the role of the government, and it's not the place of the government. So I think placing that from a branding standpoint, from an optics standpoint, and telling those personal narratives is how we start to change hearts and minds.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Brother Kwame. Natasha, before we wrap, I want to read a quote from a pretty prominent Florida resident. At least we think she lives in Florida, not quite sure, maybe New York. But this is the direct quote. It says, quote, "It is imperative to guarantee that women have autonomy in deciding their preference for having children based on their own convictions, free from any intervention or pressure from government. Why should anyone other than the woman herself have the power to determine what she does with her own body? A woman's fundamental right of individual liberty to her own life grants her the authority to terminate her pregnancy if she wishes." That is a direct quote from a memoir that will be out next Tuesday by, Melania Trump. Okay, so what do you expect in this coming election? We see Rick Scott, of course, running for re-election, who came out against Amendment 4 and then said it should be left to the states, trying to back up. We saw Mrs. Trump's husband, I forget his name, saying at first he was for abortion and then saying he's going to vote against Amendment 4. What are you expecting to see and what are you hoping to see in terms of turnout that may come to vote for Amendment 4 and maybe while they're in the ballot box, maybe put Rick Scott out of that U.S. Senate seat? Are you expecting this to attract people to the polls who may even intervene in some of these state races? And how does this Melania Trump bombshell kind of maybe play into this? Or maybe it doesn't at all. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I do want to make sure that your viewers and listeners understand that in order for us to even have qualified to be on this ballot in Florida, we had to get nearly 1 million citizens to sign a petition for us to even be at this point, right? And that is regular Florida voters across party lines, mind you, right? That's Republicans signing this, that's Democrats signing this, and it's independents signing this. So I think it's really interesting where politicians or folks that are connected to politicians have, whatever commentary they have about it, but we know where the people are with this issue. We understand what's at stake here. And we also know that we're going to have to pass this with 60% of threshold. And so we have had a very significant ground game here in Florida ever since qualifying May 1st. We have actually done over 1.4 million voter contact attempts, 1 million of those with voters, with volunteers. And so we are knocking on doors regardless of party affiliation, regardless of language, regardless of what color folks are. And when they find out that, number one, there is an extreme abortion ban currently in law in the state of Florida, they immediately understand they have to vote yes on 4. And so hopefully while they're there, they're making other very important decisions.
Yes.
And not to mention, there are also folks that might be turning out for the marijuana amendment, right? So we have 2 important amendments to our Constitution that were brought on by citizens, Amendment 3 and 4, out of the 6. The other ones the politicians put on the ballot. So I think it'll be really interesting to see the folks that are able to actually make their own decisions about these policies. I mean, this is the best example we have in Florida of direct democracy, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Democracy in action.
Dr. Carr.
Yes, please, Kwame.
Can I jump in on a closing note there?
Please, with pleasure.
I just want to hit our former First Lady, Melania Trump, with Bye Felicia, because Melania is, in our community, as we say, Melania is for the streets. And when I say she's for the streets, what I mean in that case is she just does whatever seems to suit her fancy, right? This is the same First Lady as a Slovenian immigrant who went on to demonize and lead the birther movement along with her husband against President Obama and saying he is, obviously not a citizen. And here you are as an immigrant speaking on behalf of a birther movement to keep other immigrants out, to say that you are not part of our society. So Melania Trump has zero validity here. She has zero backbone in terms of her stance. I'm happy she came out with her book, but I want to just say bye, Felicia. Melania's for the streets on this one.
Brother, we would not be able to draw a breath if we didn't let you, of all people, weigh in on that. Do you understand? This is very important.
When you shared that quote, I just said, I got to speak out on this one because that woman is, woo.
Look, man.
That's all I'm going to say.
Look, no, that's important that the king said the arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. It would have bent the other way if you didn't weigh in on this Trump family in any ways, particularly this issue. You done seen that up close and personal, so thank you for setting that record straight.
The arc of justice is long, but it bends towards Slovenia, right?
Slovenia, no question. Boy, we all gonna get put out here. No, listen, we are certainly in a deep debt to you, Sister Natasha Sutherland, all of us, and particularly on this issue. As Senior Advisor for Yes on 4, y'all get out, make sure you vote in the state of Florida. This is critical. Like you said, you wouldn't get all those signatures and gotten on the ballot. The majority of people there, the overwhelming majority, didn't support this. So now it's time to show up at the ballot box and seal the deal. Thank you for joining us from Tallahassee, Natasha Sutherland, tonight.
Thank you so much. Yes on 4, folks.
Absolutely. Yes on 4. No question. And 3, right. Hey, look, man, it's so funny you say that. Before we go to break, I remember when when Barack Obama won the election in 2008, and we were at Howard in the Student Center. And of course, all the young people are excited. Many of them the first time they got to vote. And when the ballot initiative for marijuana passed in Colorado, you couldn't hear the television, the big screen. All you saw was a marijuana leaf. And I think that cheer was actually louder than the one for when the president went over the top. But at any rate, so yeah, a lot of people come to the ballot box for a lot of reasons. But remember, yes on 4. Yes, indeed. So we'll be back in a moment here at the Black Star Network. Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment.
Winners never back down from a challenge. Champions know it's anytime, any place. But losers, they whine and waffle and take their ball home.
Trump now refusing to debate a second time.
He did terribly in the last debate. He's so easily triggered by Kamala Harris.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. If you've got something to say it to my face.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
There's nothing socialist about Kamala Harris.
Trump says Harris is a radical. I don't buy it.
Conservatives have a supermajority on the Supreme Court.
With a likely Republican Senate, those checks and balances will keep our country sane.
If Trump wins, he could end up with total control.
I'm a conservative. I don't agree with Harris on everything, but she was a tough prosecutor and she put bad guys in prison.
I voted for Donald Trump 3 times. I'm voting for Kamala Harris in November.
Now, I'm voting for Kamala Harris this fall.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
The overturning of Roe almost killed me. I had a blood clot in my uterus that caused my labor to have to be induced because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I wasn't able to get life-saving treatment sooner. I almost died. And that's because of the decision that Donald Trump made.
I was able to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I'm proud to have done it.
The doctors and nurses were afraid that if they treated me in the incorrect way, that they would be prosecuted for that. And that's appalling. Donald Trump says that women should be punished.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion?
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah.
I believe that women should have reproductive freedom to make the choices about their own bodies. 4 more years of Donald Trump means that women's rights will continue to be taken away one by one by one by one. This has to stop because women are dying.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Hello,
I'm Marissa Mitchell, a news anchor at Fox 5 DC.
Hey, what's up? It's Tammy Roman, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. In our ongoing coverage of Project 2025, we are going to now drill down a little bit on the question of employment. Project 2025, as we know, the 922-page detailed right-wing proposal of drastic changes for the next Republican president to implement will impact everyone in every aspect of our lives, including our employment. Some of the areas include, but are not limited to, restricting access to overtime pay, eliminating worker protections, eroding workplace safety, making it harder to win union recognition, denying labor rights to employees at small businesses, harming women and birthing people, widening systemic inequities in the workplace. We're going to now speak with Dr. Thela Thatch, Chief Equity Officer, Thela Thatch Consulting, joining us from Los Angeles to explain. Dr. Thatch, Thela, I'm sorry. I should know. I know better than that. I can read, and I see the diacritic mark over the A. Thela, exactly. Is that right?
Thela.
Thela, like Pele. Not really. Close. Thela. Okay. All right. But you know what? Since my mama raised me right, and I see that DR in front of your name, we're going to refer to you as Dr. Thatch, for the Chief Equity Officer. Thatch Consulting joins us from Los Angeles to explain. 922 pages. A lot of people haven't taken the time to download it or read it in detail, but you have drilled down on a section that should be of particular concern to us, I guess all of them, but on this question of employment, help us understand what Project 2025 and those who would like to implement it have in store for us when it comes to the world of work.
Right. Thank you so much for this opportunity, first of all, to explain what I'm seeing in terms of Project 2025. So you're absolutely right. The document's over 900 pages, and I literally have page notes of things that are just so extremely troubling for me as an HR person of 25 years. I just, for the sake of time, we could probably talk about this all year long, but basically it reads like one of my favorite shows that I've watched, The Handmaid's Tale. And first 5 points that really stood out to me that I must express to you is this constant mention of woke and wokeism and this negative connotation towards being woke. And so the document spends a lot of time making sure you understand that it's coming from a religious point of view. And as a human resources person, and I'm sure you're aware, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is really what this document is trying to dismantle. So the document is trying to roll back. It clearly states that it would like to, it is recommending dismantling disparate impact. It's recommending removing all language around equity, diversity, inclusion, and anything that's race-related. So I just wanted to pause there.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And,
what's most troubling is this religious oversight that the stand that they're taking from a religious point of view. So some things in there that was just blew my mind. Now, I grew up in a Baptist church. I believe in the Sabbath, but under Project 2025, the Sabbath will be mandatory in workplaces.
Wow.
Exactly. So that, I literally have the page numbers. It's like on page 533. So that's something that I'm just really appreciate being in front of you in this audience, because some of the feedback that I'm getting is people don't understand that Project 2025 is an actual document created by the Harris administration. And how will the next administration control our government and control our people in this society? Well, through the workplace. And so we have over 157 million Americans who are part of the workforce. And this is really the plan. It's not a new plan, to be able to control how people show up and the rights that they have in the workplace. So overtime protection, workplace rollbacks. And again, I just want to make sure I emphasize this very strategic gaslighting, around being woke. So in the document, there's 35 mention to the word woke, wokeism, and wokery. And the way I read that as a professional, as a doctor, is that they want us to stay asleep. And so that's really the intent. And that's how it reads. It's a very biased document that is focused on religion, Judeo-Christianity, and staying unwoke in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting because remember, I'm sure we all remember, I think 2020, the Lady of Guadalupe case out there in California, I think, where they had the religious exemption allowed them to, I think it was deprive the teacher of contraception, if memory serves me correctly. But I mean, it seems like this Roberts Court, which some people, David Brock among others, are calling the Thomas Court, really, but are running a great deal of this through the First Amendment. So the whole idea that I can use my religion to hide behind and discriminate against you, but that is a bombshell for folks who have not read Project 2025, that they want to now reach and prevent people from having employment based on these religious views. Could you walk us through some more of the work here? I mean, we saw some of the question of harming women and birthing people. How is that going to play out in terms of women?
So on page 585 in this real life document, because some people like to believe that it's not a real life document, it talks about, it's actually labeled pro-life measures. And so, as you know, in the workplace, if you have a health issue, if you're a woman, you're having a baby, or any type of health issue, it may be abortion related, maybe you've had a miscarriage, and because of health issues, you may need what they're trying to define broadly as an abortion. You have health benefits that covers those rights. You also may have time off. You also may have support from Family Medical Leave, the Family Medical Leave Act, where you can take 12 weeks to care for either a baby or your spouse or partner who may have experienced some type of birth. Well, under this act, if it's in any way related to abortion, all of those rights are removed. You would not have time off. You would not have access to health providers. They would not allow the employer to provide health benefits to anyone who has an abortion-related event. So, quote unquote, from the Project 2025, it says, no employer is required to provide any accommodations or benefits for abortion, no time off, basically no care, this is my paraphrase, if you have anything related to abortion. So even if you're a male and your wife had an incident or your partner had an incident regarding something that was abortion related, it would not be covered and your job would be in jeopardy.
I tell you what, you know what, people might think, well, that's far-fetched to compare this vision to Margaret Atwood and Handmaid's Tale. But that sounds just like Gilead. I think your comparison is right, right on the nose. Let's bring our panel in to raise some questions and be in conversation with Dr. Thalay Thatch. Kwame Jackson, questions for Dr. Thalay Thatch.
Dr. Thatch, I want to thank you in particular for dissecting this document and revealing even more about what I want to call a roadmap to a purge. That's what this is. This document is a roadmap to a complete purge within the federal government structure to get out all expertise, to get out all longtime service professionals in the federal government and put in Donald Trump loyalists, people who are religious zealots, people who want to roll back rights for women and purge that whole structure so that those people can come in and implement this playbook. So be clear that this is a roadmap for a purge. And this roadmap for a purge, we've seen this playbook before. If we go back to Reconstruction and the end of the Civil War, and we said, okay, America's at a reset point. We're at a tipping point in terms of where we're going to go. And we know that the Redeemers came along, the Redeemers, the former Confederates, who went back into government and started writing out laws to come back and say, we're going to institute Jim Crow, we're going to institute sundown towns, we're going to institute a whole roadmap for a purge. And so we've seen this playbook before. America is now at another precipice where we have to really back away from that and know that we can fight it. I know in a lot of my work, I do a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion work with the University of North Carolina and battling a lot of what's happening in that state. I do a lot of work with corporate partners on the same side and have for a long time. My question to you, Dr. Thatch, is how do we start to battle some of the nuanced corporate DEI anti-work that's in Project 2025, as well as at the academic level with cases like the University of North Carolina, cases like Harvard that are rolling back affirmative action? What would you recommend as 2 or 3 strategies that we start to use to battle and push back against this roadmap for a purge, particularly within that DEI space?
Yeah, great question. So in my recent book, The Diversity Dilemma, I talk about a roadmap that involves the 7 A's. And I won't get into all of the 7 A's, but some of the A's involve awareness. And so honestly, as you know, as a DEI professional, this is the biggest part of the work, is making sure that in our workplaces that we are aware that these tools, that these resources, that these that this exists, right? Project 2025, when I'm working in my everyday HR job, people have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't believe that Project 2025 exists. So that's why I started putting page numbers, printing it out, showing it to people. So that's step number 1. And then, you know, I'm really grateful that I get to work with organizations and clients who, regardless of how the government is moving, they are committed. You know, these organizations have values around inclusion and equity. They believe in keeping the E in equity, unlike some organizations. And so, you know, the reality is the fight will always continue, whether the federal government steps in. And, you know, honestly, I feel so bad for federal employees because the first few pages of this document is about getting rid of them, about taking away their retirement benefits, about laying them off. And just, yeah, they're just like, I don't know how many we're going to get rid of, but we're just going to get rid of all of them. And so I think our first ally could be the federal employees, making sure that they know their rights. They're trying to get rid of unions. So how can we align with unions to make sure that we're all on the same page and in the same fight? But again, if you have union members who don't believe that document exists and they don't believe there's a problem. So I think our work is really awareness, education, making sure that companies are actually aligned to the work around inclusion and equity. And then it's taking action, you know, taking action like me today, being here, making sure people are aware you and this amazing platform is taking action because we're gathering a movement.
Yeah, and you know, Dr. Thatch, it's funny because it's important that we're all out here kind of spreading the gospel around Project 2025 and making sure that people are hearing that good word. But at the same time, one of the other nuances that I just picked up yesterday and I did not know was that J.D. Vance, obviously the vice presidential candidate, wrote the foreword to Project 2025. So not only did he write the foreword, but they're trying to backpedal and moonwalk out of this thing so quickly, and people don't even understand that he wrote the foreword for Project 2025. That was an opportunity for Tim Walz to really call that out that I didn't even know. And so we need to constantly be educating, constantly tying people back into this plan and saying, if this is what you believe, if this is what you put pen to paper to put forward, that you need to be held accountable. So I want people to know that J.D. Vance wrote the foreword to Project 2025.
And may I add to that, there were over 140 of Trump employees, former Trump employees in some form or fashion that wrote this document. Yep. That's a fact.
Critical.
Okay. So we're going to try to squeeze in Dr. Thatch just in a quick second. Jade Mathis, anything you have to add, questions, comments for Dr. Thatch before we go to break?
Question, Doctor. Good evening. So one of the things I ask is from a legal stance, right? What does that mean for the EEOC? Like, what does that mean for those type of complaints? What does that mean for private companies? What does that look like? Because if there's no more protected class, or discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origins, what does that mean? And then who's accounting for any discrimination? Or is it just there's no account for it? Like, what does that look like long term? Are there any alternatives?
Really, no. So we would be going back to the time before we were able to have civil rights. So rolling back Title VII and rolling back words like disparate impact, which is the #1 theory that allows us, the framework that allows us to have a lawsuit with the EEOC. So in the document, they are dismantling the EEOC. So the purpose is to remove the power from the EEOC and to remove those words, and I'm not an attorney for the record, to remove those legal cases that could support a racial claim. So you're absolutely right. There would not be any recourse. That is the absolute, answer to your question. Because once you roll back words like race, disparate impact, once you remove all of the Title VII protections, that's all we had. Since 1964, that is the reason why we have rights. I'm trying to scream it off the rooftops, is that the civil rights that we have will be taken away. And we will see it similar to The Handmaid's Tale, which one of the famous scenes where they're being pulled out of their workplaces. It will happen in your workplace because that's the first place the government is able to control. It can actually control it right now with the Patriot Act, and we won't get into that. But there's measures in place to protect us in the workplace under Title VII. So that is why Title VII is the main act that is under attack with Project 25, because they know once they roll that back, there will not be any recourse.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jade. And, it's interesting, Kevin Roberts, as we know, who leads that, heads up this project, he wrote his dissertation down at the University of Texas, Austin, on all things, the Haitian Revolution to Nat Turner's Rebellion. So his vision for us in this country is wrapped around a concept of how black people just need to get down and lay down and assimilate. These people are not playing with us, and we need to stop playing with them. Listen, this was very, very, very informative and very necessary. As you know, Dr. Thatch, this is an ongoing segment here at Roland Martin Unfiltered, but you have filled in well and set a standard, I think, as we go forward in terms of a close read and putting it in a place where, as Joe Madison used to say, the goats can get it, we can all understand. Dr. Thaler Thatch, Chief Equity Officer, Thaler Thatch Consulting. Thank you very much for joining us tonight here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you for having me.
With pleasure, with pleasure. We'll be back in a moment here at Roland Martin Unfiltered, and right back after the break.
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished?
There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message. I get it. The cost of rent, groceries, and utilities is too high. So here's what we're going to do about it. We will lower housing costs by building more homes and crack down on landlords who are charging too much. We will lower your food and grocery bills by going after price gougers who are keeping the cost of everyday goods too high. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message because you work hard for your paycheck. You should get to keep more of it. As president, I'll make that my top priority.
What's good, y'all? This is Doug E. Fresh, and you're watching my brother Roland Martin Unfiltered as we go a little something like this. Hit it. It's real.
Welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. Remember to support the Black Star Network. Again, one more night of reasons why. We saw this entire suite of stories today. Let's continue. We're going to move to Colorado for a moment. The convicted election-denying Colorado clerk who tried to help Donald Trump overturn the 2020 election results will spend about 9 years in prison. A jury convicted Tina Peters last month of allowing a man associated with MyPillow's Mike Lindell to enter the Mesa County election system after the 2020 election. Peters was convicted on 7 criminal charges in August, which included an attempt to influence a public servant, conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation, and violation of duty. Prosecutors said the conspiracy peddling clerk turned off security cameras, gave the man access, and then leaked voting data to her fellow conspiracy theorists. Peters is the only United States election official to be convicted of criminal charges relating to stolen election conspiracy theories in 2020. Now we'll turn for a moment here, let's see, to the state of Georgia, where we will, give me a second here. Yes, the SAVE plan. This is very important, particularly for folks who are worrying about canceling student debt. A federal judge in Georgia declined to block President Joe Biden's plan to cancel student debt under the Higher Education Act of 1965. This decision was made in response to a lawsuit from a group of GOP state attorneys general who sought to stop the relief's implementation. Judge Randall Hall ruled that Georgia was the improper venue to file the lawsuit, and he's transferring the case to the federal Eastern District of Missouri. Missouri's Attorney General was among the plaintiffs who filed the lawsuit, and the case argued that the student loan company Mohela, some of you all know that acronym and know it well, overseen by the Missouri state government, would suffer revenue loss from any form of debt relief. The Supreme Court, of course, struck down Biden's first attempt at broad debt relief after finding Missouri had standing to sue given the harm Mohela would suffer. So let's start with this student debt question. Well, either story, if either one you want to comment. Jade, any comment on either one of these last two stories? I'm just thinking about all this legal trickery and chicanery and who has standing and who doesn't to try to stop people from getting their student loan relief.
Well, I do want to first address the Colorado clerk because I feel like justice. We have one piece of justice that was served tonight. She's 68 years old. You know, she actually claimed that she had health issues, alleged she had health issues, and asked for probation. However, the judge in this case and the jury in this case, I think, got it right. 8.5 years, 8.5 years. However, one thing I would say is that I love me a good judge who is slick on the tongue, was educated and slick. Let me tell you some of the things the judge said to her during sentencing. He said, "You are as defiant as any defendant this court has ever seen. You're no hero. You are a charlatan." He also said during the sentencing, they also said during the sentencing that he believed that she was not charged and convicted of this. Given the opportunity, she would do it again. And I think that is the true definition of justice. The judge did their job, the jury did their job, and I'm very impressed with it. I think that was the correct decision to make. And 8.5 years is a generous amount of time that you're serving, particularly if you're 68 years old.
Lord have mercy. She in jail. Kwame, any thoughts, brother?
Yeah, I would add to Jade's excellent commentary, and I would say this, that folks need to know that they can't mess around and they can't play around with elections, and that those things have consequences. We have to understand that this is serial behavior. This is not a Colorado issue. This is the fake slate of electors, the fake slate of electors in Michigan, the fake slate of electors in Georgia, the fake slate of electors in Arizona. This is serial behavior that happened state by state, that was orchestrated through all the chicanery and kind of backroom deals in the Republican MAGA side of the party. So we have to understand, in order to stop that serial behavior, there have to be consequences. So folks need to understand they cannot mess around, and that this was a great way to attack that MAGA agenda to subvert our election process.
My goodness. Well, I tell you, it is a hell of a case to have been decided with a month to the election. Of course, early voting has already started, so election day isn't November the 5th. It doesn't have to be. It's not only November the 5th. Y'all can register and get in line now and do that as we speak. You know, we didn't get a chance to get to this story today, but I'm sure we'll be coming back to it in future days, because we just started the month of October. We know that is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I have a number of friends, some of my students have made the comment in the wake of what's going on with Sean Combs in particular. This has taken on an added platform and significance, and Roland Martin Unfiltered, of course, we're here, Roland Martin Unfiltered, are covering this issue, this ongoing issue, until it's not an issue. That's our vision. But we're gonna, in order to do that, it's gonna take some work. You know, here we are, we've reached the end of the show, and Kwame Jackson, political strategist out of Los Angeles, California, and Jade Mathis, Counsel, District Legal Group here in Washington, D.C. Thank you both for joining us. Look forward to the conversation that we'll be having going forward, and we'll be back in this community on Thursday nights as usual. If you are not yet subscribed, if you're not yet a supporter to the Black Star Network, please, by all means, do that. You know how to do it. You can subscribe. You can check us out on iPhone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Fire TV, Xbox One, Smart TV. Understand that we're looking for donors to the tune of $20,000 at $50 a year. That allows us to support the budget here at the Black Star Network. It isn't just Roland Martin Unfiltered. It's a bevy of shows, and Roland and the network have allowed me to host one called The Black Table. We usually come on Fridays. We got new shows in the can coming up. You see there on screen, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. There are ways, many ways to support on PayPal, paypal.me/Roland Martin Unfiltered, Venmo, venmo.com/RM Unfiltered, and Zelle, Roland@RolandMartin.com, and Roland@RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Those who do snail mail like my mom and them do, we want the kind of money that folds, not the kind of money that jingles. You saw the P.O. box up there. Shout out to the great John Amos, Mr. McDowell, his daughter, telling them at the Miss Black Queens pageant, we want the money that folds. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-096. In the words of Roland S. Martin, traveling back from Alabama, will end the way he would end, with the two fingers. Holla.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?